Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Anderson, and I am delighted to welcome you on behalf of Country Navigator to this special session in honor of International Women's Day this week. We're excited to be having a conversation with three inspiring senior leaders in which they'll share their stories and experiences of being a woman in a leadership role and their insights into the challenges and successes of their journeys towards inclusive, equitable cultures. So, with us today, we have Marta Gasparin, who's head of marketing, prestige and motorsport BU at Pirelli, a successful marketing manager with 20 years of experience in the exciting world of luxury cars and motor racing. Marta is an expert in implementing, measuring, and optimizing marketing and communication activities. And she is passionate, driven by motivation, energy, and positivity, and has taken a leading role in supporting other women in motorsport. We also have Jess Carter, who's a journalist and broadcaster with the communication space, a content and communications professional with extensive experience in journalism, broadcasting, live events, filmmaking, and media training. Jess has had an international career spanning places like Hong Kong, the US, and the UK, working with organizations like NBC, ABC, ITV, and the BBC. And she is passionate about helping people tell the stories journalists want to hear through media training, comms, films, and events. And thirdly, we have Gabrielle Prizard, who is head of global ABM COE at Cloud Software Group, passionate about helping leaders make digital transformation a reality. Gabrielle has extensive experience in senior positions in organizations, including BT, IBM, and Citrix, and she brings an in-depth understanding of strategic change and helps businesses to find new ways to build success in a crowded marketplace. So I am really excited about having the three of you here, and we're going to jump in straight away and begin with some questions. But while we are continuing with the session, please do, in the audience, I'm sure you'll have questions you want to ask. Please do enter those in the Q&A area of the screen. So you can click on the Q&A button or in the chat. So I'd love to hear from you and have an opportunity to have some of your questions answered. But I'll begin with a question to kick us off. You are all leaders in your respective fields with plenty of experience. What are the factors that you think have really helped you along the way? So the two or three things that have been most pivotal. And I'd love to kick off with Jess inviting you to share your thoughts on what has been really critical in the success that you now experience.
Thank you. Yes, so I think it's a yes or no answer, and that's a bit of a gag for you, because when I was younger, I didn't take no for an answer, and so for the first part of my career, I had the passion and the drive and the determination. Not that that's gone anywhere, but that is initially what sort of got me through various doors. When I went to Hong Kong, for example, I had written to lots of people in advance looking for work, and they had all politely written back saying, don't come, there's no work. And I went anyway, and obviously found work on the ground and ended up working for the South China Morning Post when I was about 21. So that's the kind of don't take no for an answer. And then the yes part is actually later in my career, as I got more senior and took on more leadership roles, was that confidence to actually be a bit scared by something, but actually just force myself to just do it and just say yes and have a yes attitude, which is, yes, this is a bit scary, but yes, I'm going to do it. And the older I've got, the easier that has become. So yeah, that's my quick tips. And the other thing is childcare, which oh my God, there's a report out today on how terrible childcare is in the UK and how expensive it is. And, when my kids were young, I had au pairs, which was the only way I could actually manage to have a full-time career and have the kids looked after. So yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah, completely relate to that one. myself. Thank you so much for that. And Marta, how about we hear from you next on that? Top 2 or 3 things that have built your success to date.
Well, thank you. Thank you, first of all. I think the first word that comes to my mind is passion. As passion is an ingredient that in motorsport, which is my working environment, can't be missed in the recipe, because this job is stealing so much from your private life that it cannot be done without a big boost coming from passion. And of course, determination, but at the same time, also the right conditions to develop yourself as a human being, first of all, and then as a professional. And I have to say that from this perspective, I've been lucky enough to grow up before in a very supportive family, teaching me that with the right mix of toughness, fairness, and determination, basically everything's possible. And on a professional perspective, to work with companies sharing my same values in terms of meritocracy and promotion of talent and motivation. So very healthy working environments. And this is extremely important for me, for my value scheme and for my personal well-being ranking. So basically, also, I think that a cultural factor is fundamental to infuse self-confidence in young women and future leaders, let's say. So in my case, for example, motorsport as a working environment has never been easy or particularly welcoming, especially when I was a young girl at my first job after university. But personally, I've never felt different or in a way unadapted to fit on a certain role, being a woman, as I've always been fully supported by a positive cultural environment, by my family before, by the companies I've worked in terms of giving me the opportunity to succeed. So I guess this also helped me to build and strengthen my self-confidence, and not to stop or being discouraged to proceed and to go on in my path into motorsport.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Gabrielle.
Thank you. So it's similar to some of what Marta said there. So I've never worked anywhere where I felt the culture or the environment was detrimental to me being a woman, and I couldn't advance or I couldn't interact in the ways I wanted to interact. So, and whether that's working for heavily male dominated companies or less so, it's always been the same. So I've always felt, I wouldn't say supported by the place that I've worked always, but it never stopped me from doing what I felt was the right thing for me or for my team or whatever. And maybe I'm just very thick-skinned. That's another possibility. But I never noticed, and in fact, when I think about some of the situations I've worked in, probably the most scary environments or the ones where I've felt a little bit more attentive is when I've been managed by a very strong or aggressive woman. I think that's, but there's also something to learn from that. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing that really has helped me in times of difficulty or wondering where I should go next is really having access to a strong mentor. And certainly years ago, I had a sales mentor. She helped me so much in terms of my direction, my goal. In fact, I changed jobs based on her advice. So I think knowing what you need and finding someone in a mentoring format to fulfill that need is a key thing to have up your sleeve.
Really interesting. And all of you've mentioned in your answers the impact of the culture that you've been in, and how that might have helped or hindered. In terms of thinking about what organizations can be doing, what in your view should we be doing in organizations to increase inclusion? Love to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm wondering who would like to kick off that discussion? Just give me an indication. Gabrielle,
Yeah,
off you
yeah.
go.
So, well, okay. So I've got a slightly controversial view here. So the first point is, I think we have to kind of stop talking about it. Not that it you know, it's not, it is an issue for many women. You know, history tells us it's an issue, and I did a bit of research before this, which I'm not going to bore you with. However, sometimes just talking about it, we've got to get our quotas of women in the workplace. You know, let's have a women wellness group and a women's community, and look what we're doing for women. It's kind of a bit detrimental, because I don't know about anyone else on this panel, but I don't want to feel like a special case. I want to feel like, you know, I'm known for what I do, not because I'm a woman and therefore I've got special, you know, requirements. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, it's really about the company's values. So you can put in place diversity and inclusion programs, et cetera, but think about the sort of values. So when I worked for IBM, you know, their history is embedded in inclusion, in you know, being open and honest, and you know, everyone matters. And I think it's important that when companies are starting out or even resetting their values, that they think about those values that they can infuse through behaviors that people understand and see in the workplace. Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox, but that's my feelings anyway.
Great, thank you. And Jess, thoughts on that?
Yeah,
the role of culture.
Yes, I'm going to disagree, and we haven't even planned it. But it was interesting because yesterday I went to a diversity and inclusion event, which was hosted by the British Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. And there was a speaker there who is an amazing woman called Gurpreet Manku, who's the Deputy Director General, and she's just about to actually leave and go and head up a charity called Level 20, which is all about getting more women into private capital. And I entirely understand the argument about not being seen as a special case. And, you know, for me, that really applies around the menopause. I don't like all of the headlines around menopause, making women seem like a burden rather than sort of at the top of our careers. However, looking at this room, there were probably 150 young women in it. They're at the start of their careers in private capital. Gurpreet was saying that, you know, she had issues when she started and still comes across issues with, you know, the men in the corner talking about the rugby at Twickenham and her feeling like she didn't have a place in the room. And so, you know, she wants to focus on this charity. And I think there is still a place for it. I also know a couple of absolutely kick-ass lawyers from Edmonds, Marshall McMahon, both women, who have started a networking training course for women because they have noticed such a difference between women's level of confidence when they're taking people into the company and men's level of confidence. And so they have sort of built something to address it, to try to build the network and build the confidence. So while I wish we didn't have to have something different, I feel that for the next probably 20 years, it's still a good idea. And then maybe at some point we can just phase it all out and it can be done. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you think, Marta.
Well, I think I can echo partially what Gabri said before. So in my opinion, especially in certain working environment, we need to stop talking about offering women-only development programs. Because it shouldn't be even necessary to talk about it, to be honest, because to me, talent has no gender. And what a company needs to pursue is a culture of talent and meritocracy. And I think that from this perspective, endorsing the leadership programs focused on women can only worsen the perception of a gender bias in a certain organization. So I think that every one of us has not only the chance, but also the responsibility to embrace and to share a real culture of equality. So no biases, no prejudice, only results. And I have a very nice example to share with you. I had the chance to read an interview a few days ago to a member of the only full female team taking part in the last 24 hours of Daytona. So it's a very tough and very difficult competition. And she was asked if it's difficult to gain respect being a female driver in a male-dominated world. And she simply said that respect comes with results. So, and this pretty much sums up what I personally think about having more equality in our sport, but it works also on industries as well. So to mention a metaphor of our sport, the checkered flag doesn't know if you're male or woman. It only awards the fastest and the smartest driver.
I love that. I love that checkered flag analogy. That's good. I can kind of try and use it. I'm not sure if in my industry it works so well, but it's brilliant. Can I just pick up? I'm sorry,
Sure.
just quickly on that point around confidence and the example that Jess gave. So at the meeting where the men were in the corner talking about rugby. Do you know, it is about confidence. So if that was me at that meeting, well, now maybe not my younger self, I don't know. I would go along and either join in the conversation about rugby, which I'm absolutely terrible at in terms of knowledge, or I would say, look, you know, why don't you know, let's talk about something else. You're not talking about rugby again. You know, let's, you know, and try and change the conversation and maybe with humour. But yeah, that's just my take.
Yeah,
sorry, Jess, you had your hand up.
No, it's fine. I was just going to chuck in, obviously the checkered flag is fantastic, but most of us are not racing, you know, to a line where you're measured, and measurement is an assessment is part of the problem, because you know, women who are not getting promoted can't ever quite put their finger on, you know, they did a good interview, they've had good results, you know, they've presented well, they've done good work, but someone else might have been promoted above them, and you'll never know if it's because you're a woman or not. And that's part of the challenge, I think, is that it's unquantifiable, whereas actually, you know, racing brilliantly, you know, obviously results, yeah, that's a given. But yeah, if only we could all have some sort of brilliant checkered flag way of measuring our output.
Absolutely. And you know, the confidence word has come up a few times, right from the answers to the very first questions. In terms of that, obviously, Gabrielle, you talk about, you know, having the confidence to be able to go up and address that. What are some of the things in your experience to date, the three of you, that have helped grow that confidence and build that confidence? And I wonder if we start off with Marta, because you know, you're in I mean, all three are have been in very challenging environments, but how does one develop that confidence if perhaps you're one of the people in the audience today who's thinking, oh, I'd love to be confident enough to do that? How do we build that?
I think that, as I was saying before, most of my confidence was coming infused by my family and the kind of trust they gave me when I was a young lady and before a child, and wanted to compete in this playground. So basically, it's all about infusing the right values on people. Maybe I've been lucky on that. But and I think that was pretty much summing up what the importance that have to me to grow up in and to raise in a certain value scheme, let's say. Because as I was saying before, the environment is not welcoming, but I personally never felt that I won't be able to succeed only because I was a woman in a male environment.
Absolutely. So we've actually got a really great question in the chat that is related to this question of confidence. Many women and men and male leaders I coach have suffered from self-doubt and imposter syndrome during their careers. Have you ever suffered from self-generated barriers? And if so, how have you overcome them? I think that's a fantastic question. Who wants to kick off with that answer?
I'll do that one if you like. Oh, We'll
Oh,
fight.
let's go with Jess. Let's go with
Let's go
Jess first this
Jess.
time,
Oh,
although
okay.
Gabrielle's hand was up slightly earlier. Let's have you kick this one off this time, and then we'll go to Gabrielle.
Sorry.
Yes. No, we're also confident now. We're all
We
dying
love
to
the
say-
enthusiasm.
I was going to say to anyone watching who thinks about imposter syndrome, I did some filming with the lawyers involved in this training scheme, and they interviewed about 20 lawyers absolutely at the top of their game, just the top lawyers in the UK, all women, and 19 out of the 20 said that they had imposter syndrome, and you could not have believed it. They were so accomplished. So but they all equally said, but you have to ignore it. You know, yes, it's a feeling, but you have to ignore it. So, so that would be my main sort of point on that. And linking that to confidence, when I was younger, it was definitely a case of fake it till you make it. You know, being a journalist, I used to feel like I put my cloak of journalism on, and then I could talk to people as a journalist. When I took the cloak off and was myself, I was much less confident. So there is an element of sort of stepping into your role. And I've also got a brilliant trick that I use, which is if I'm in a room with particularly a man who I find maybe a bit intimidating, and you know, and I think, you know, I'm less important than him, or he's more of a leader than me, or something like that. I just think, if we'd been in the sixth form together, what would he have been like? And I immediately see myself as a 17-year-old. I see him as a 17-year-old, and the playing field is level, because at sixth form, I never thought the boys were better than me. And so why are they better than me now that they're men? So that is a really good little one to keep in your back pocket as well.
Really interesting. Yeah. When does that shift? Interesting question. Gabrielle, go ahead.
So I quite like the idea. We've got a checkered flag and we've got a cloak now as well. So I can definitely use both of those. We could have a checkered cloak even. My thoughts are that, yes, we've all felt like imposter syndrome, and I definitely have had that self-generated barrier probably many times. But this one time I remember was working for a really aggressive female leader who was bullying, actually not just aggressive, bullying, and you know, sort of quaking in my shoes, and it makes you doubt everything, and I think some of that experience made me actually think, no, let's just feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, don't let that stuff hold you back. So like when I first moved into consulting, you know, I was terrified because I, you know, never had to stand up in front of, you know, other businesses, for instance. So but it's really about feel the fear and do it anyway, and kind of know that this imposter syndrome thing exists. And, you know, we've all got our own cloaks that we can wrap around ourselves to try and minimize the effects of imposter syndrome. Yeah,
I love
that
that.
was mine.
Yeah. Really thinking about, you know, what one's personal cloak might be in that case. Love that idea. And Marta, thoughts on, have you experienced imposter syndrome?
I say, I don't know, maybe sometimes, but I think that it was tough to succeed. It was really tough. So basically, what I tried to do was to concentrate myself on the why I was there, and why and for what I was fighting for. So I was only trying to concentrate on my passion and on my targets, and then also trying to, let's say, enjoy a little bit the results in the end.
Celebrate those. Yeah, really important. I think so often we're striving that we're not taking those moments to really celebrate and appreciate where we've come from and what we've achieved. Thinking about development, and obviously all of you've developed extensively in your fields. What is your advice to women and anyone else listening to further their own development? What are some of the things that have worked for you in furthering your development? Who would like to kick us off with that one? How have you developed yourselves? Let me see. Marta, we haven't started with you for a while. What has contributed to your development and growth?
I think again, my big passion from my job. I think that this pretty much come from there, from the beginning. As I was saying, it was not easy, but I tried never to lose my focus on the result I wanted to achieve.
Great. So focus and passion and asking why. Why am I doing this? Jess, what's contributed to your development?
I'm feeling rather guilty because I'm not sure I've ever done anything to actively develop myself. I think it just comes through age and experience, and yeah, I just think you can't be putting yourself in a situation, being a bit scared, challenging yourself, pushing yourself, and through that comes growth. So it's a sort of boots on the ground development for me.
Brilliant. And it sounds like also never taking no for an answer.
Exactly, yeah.
From your original story. And Gabrielle, what's accelerated your development?
Well, actually, I'm sort of boringly similar, I think, in that it's really been about the roles I've had, the organizations I've worked for, and as I said before, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So putting myself in situations that I really wouldn't, aspire to normally, but actually thinking it'd be really good for me to do that. So essentially, yeah, just doing it.
Brilliant. And one of the themes that's coming out really strongly for me from all three of you is that we will feel fear, but not to listen to it and to just plow on regardless and grab those opportunities. That fear is actually part of the journey. So we've had another question come in, which is Christine Lagarde says that women are given the opportunity, senior roles, when there are extra challenging times and difficulties. Is this something you have also experienced? It's an interesting question. Women are given the opportunities in senior roles when there are extra challenging times. What are your thoughts on that? Anyone got any immediate thoughts on that? Something you've noticed or seen?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes. So I wonder if it's something about women's ability to be empathetic. You have a challenging time, so it's not. Is it about the red hot project managers, or task oriented, or cope with pressure well? It's probably all of that. Let's face it, we have to be multitaskers. We raise kids. We may be a housewife at times, but also we're in the office or whatever our role is. So we juggle many tasks, and so that's why I imagine that it makes us attractive for that kind of role or responsibility.
Great, thank you.
What do you think, Jess?
I was just going to say I don't really recognize that from my own experience, and I find the idea quite annoying, actually. It'd be interesting to see if it's actually true, if anyone could do a bit of a, scout around. I'm sure, women would still be sort of significantly in the minority. And I'm going to go off and Google what she said now and myself, because I find that kind of unbelievable but fascinating. So thanks for the question.
Chat GPT can help.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just discovering all that now. So here's an interesting question. Women's Day, which we had yesterday, is about celebrating women in their roles. We do it every year, but nothing changes. You've said that women must succeed on their talents and skills, but why are there not more women in senior leadership roles? Interesting, challenging. Why are there not more?
I can take that. I know not all women have children. I don't want to sort of paint a brush across everyone, because obviously not all women have children, and lots of dads are very involved in their children's lives. But I do just think that in the majority of cases, it sort of comes down to that. And you end up, when I had au pairs when the kids were really little, I worked full time and I could really throw myself into my job because I had someone living in my house 24/7 and sleeping in my house. And so I could work as late as I needed to. I could go in for shifts as early as I needed to do. I could do night shifts, there were no restrictions on me. But when the kids went to school, everything changes. And I found it really difficult to be a good mother and be fully immersed in my career, which was painful because I love my job and I prefer to work than look after my children, which sounds awful, but looking after kids is really hard and boring. My job's really interesting and exciting. So but obviously I love them, I wanted to spend time with them, and so on and so on. And so I definitely felt myself slowing down in terms of my trajectory as the kids were kind of school age, basically. And I think that's a huge issue. And until things are just hugely more equal, and until childcare costs are sorted out, it's going to be a massive barrier and problem.
Absolutely. Other thoughts, Gabrielle or Marta?
Yeah, so I think, I absolutely agree with all of that. In fact, thank you for saying that. I wasn't sure I was going to be brave enough to say about the childcare thing, but it's a reality. But the other thing, it's time, and it everything takes a long time. So it's about culture change, and women in the workplace. If you go back to sort of my mother's generation, that not many women worked once they were married or certainly had kids, never went back to work. So, you think about how that's changed. I don't know what the proportion of women that actually work full-time or part-time now is, but it's got to be a significant growth curve. So I think it's time. It's just taking a long time. And yes, maybe there'll be more equality in the childcare. I don't know if that's the case, but maybe it's about society just needs to change its perspective a little bit on, who does the childcare, or the value of women who start their careers, do reasonably well, have a break for children, and then restart their careers. Maybe that there's a way of valuing their contribution a bit better than there is now. Maybe that's a political statement. I don't know.
Absolutely. And it sounds, again, that's something that perhaps organizations should be considering, is how to make those contexts easier. Absolutely. There's another really interesting one related to this, is, do you believe women and other marginalized groups have to try harder? And what can organizations do to change that perspective? So along that same theme. So Marta, let's start that one with you. Do you believe women and other marginalized groups have to try harder?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think that if you believe in what you think is right for your path, and you need also, of course, to try to find the right conditions to develop that. But I think that you have never stopped to try to let's say to be and to catch your I don't know, it seems trivial, but to catch your dreams and to try harder to do that. Yeah, no stop to do that.
Yeah. Thoughts from either of the others? What can we do to change that perspective?
So I think it's a bit like the question earlier, isn't it? It's about, the company values, and probably not talking about it so much. Look, this is a marginalized group. Look what we've done. But more about, what are our values that support anyone in the workplace? Do you go to work and feel you're in an environment that supports your values?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're male or female or some other I hate being called a marginalized group, actually, but So I think it's about the culture. I think that's what organizations should work hard on. And I also agree with Jess on the menopause help groups and things like that. Focus on other things.
Mm, mm. And Jess, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have to try harder, but I'm not sure if that's fair. It's a bit of a self-imposed, possibly, feeling that because we feel on the back foot, we do try harder and try to deliver better, quicker, faster, in a more detailed way, that sort of thing. I have definitely noticed, it's a bit of a cliche, but I've definitely noticed that, the blokes I've worked with have been a lot more slapdash about what they're delivering, or what their opinion might be, or how much research they might do before a meeting. And, the women tend to be more well prepared and have thought about it more and present it better and so on. But I don't know where that's coming from. I'm slightly afraid that's a sort of an internal driver.
Right. Yeah. Interesting perspective. In terms of Gabrielle, you mentioned earlier the value of having a mentor that really contributed to your development. And I was curious about the other two, and whether you had that in your experience, someone who, male or female, provided that value for you in your role in your early career, and what the impact was of that.
I haven't had an official mentoring relationship, but I have worked with impressive women who have helped along the way. So one of them is a colleague who I met in Hong Kong, who was more senior than me. And we both ended up working at the BBC in the end. And so she would prep me for interviews by actually doing fake interviews with me. And wow. It made a huge difference, because I train people that, if you're in an interview, you have to practice what you're going to say out loud. Don't just have it in your head. And so we did a lot of that together. And so she's a great example. I had another female boss who was brilliant, who kind of just broke the mold a bit. She used to wear skinny jeans and sort of thigh-high boots and make crisp sandwiches, and she would go out for a fag and, that sort of thing. So she just wasn't a sort of corporate person, but she had a great kind of charisma around her. And so, she was influential, but not an official mentoring relationship, which actually I think perhaps I should get. Yeah, perhaps I'll get myself one now.
You've been inspired.
I have.
And Marta, for you, anyone who stands out or contributed personally?
I have to say that I'm really surrounded by amazing and really tough women that in our sport and in our environment had found the way to succeed. Because the point is that it should be normal to have women in motorsport, women in IT, engineering, as in any other job, because there are other features that really count, like professionalism, dedication, passion again. And this has been my mantra over the past 20 years. And I think that if I'm here to talk about it, it's actually possible if you have the right condition around you. From this perspective, Pirelli is the global tire partner of Formula One. And in our team, we actually have female trackside engineers, female compound engineers, female tire test drivers employed in our proving grounds. And we have a female head of Formula One logistics, which is in charge of moving all our tires and stuff around the world. So think about the kind of responsibility these women have in their hands in a full dominated male world. So I really feel this energy around me. Also leading a team of 12 beautiful women.
Amazing. So yeah, then that passion just really comes through in that answer as well. Going back to something that we talked about a few minutes ago, which is some of the challenges that women experience. Do you believe that organizations should be playing a bigger role in influencing society regarding some of those challenges, like childcare that we were just hearing about in the news today? What are your thoughts, and what role should they play, or could they play in changing that?
Yeah,
Who's
of
gonna
course,
jump
I
in?
think it's
Mhm.
fundamental because, as I was saying before, I think I would never work for a company not sharing my values with regards to that. And again, I was really somehow lucky enough to have found on my path bosses and companies who were really inspiring myself and let's say also matching my values somehow. And Pirelli, for example, my actual company, they're doing very much to support career paths of talented young women, from dedicated scholarship, for example, to support the growth of the female share into STEM professions, to specific, you were mentioning childcare and parenthood before. I don't know, I'm not having any child, but I think that you are kind of superheroes. I have a couple of mothers in my team, and I really have a very great respect for them, because I don't know, actually, I don't know what it takes to have a full-time job and to grow a child at the same time. And from this perspective, I was saying that the Pirelli is doing a lot to support parenthood in general, and we have specific policies to support maternity leaves and motherhood in general. And I think that this is really something important to support as an organization, the growth of female leaders within the organization itself.
Very good, thank you. Other thoughts, Jess? What could organizations be doing? Should they be doing?
Notwithstanding obviously all the horrors of the pandemic, I think actually the pandemic has been the thing that has changed everything, and things are not going to change back, and it has forced organizations' hands. I don't think they would have done it without. I think, obviously a handful will have had good policies and made changes, but essentially now, I'm currently working 3 days a week for the BVCA, for example. People who are full-time come in 2 to 3 times a week, and I just don't think that anyone would ever expect to come in 5 days a week again. It's just created such huge flexibility, whatever age you are, whatever sex you are, just to be able to have better work-life balance. And I just don't think it would have been sort of handed over on a plate unless something had absolutely forced it. So that's made a huge difference, and hopefully will lead to greater and better things, because people are now really understanding that you can take a break between 3 and 4 to pick your kids up from school, and then you can go back to work from 6 till 9 when they're in bed, which is what plenty of people do. So yeah, I think that's the biggest change.
Yeah, I think that's been a phenomenal change actually in how we operate now. And Gabrielle, thoughts on that one as well?
Well, I think not only do they have to do it, I think many organizations are already doing it. Again, it's a competitive advantage to them to be seen to be running lots of programs, having a great diversity and inclusion policy, and have that publicly supporting STEM, and for young people. Certainly the last few organizations I've worked for have all had this sort of same mantra about doing more for society, doing more for underprivileged or marginalized groups, if we will call it that. So I think that's essential, and we will continue to see more of that, as long as it's not just lip service. I mean, the last company I worked for instance, offered you paid time off to do voluntary work. So I think it's like 10 days a year or something, which is amazing, really. But, not a huge company, but it's a great thing to do. So we're at work for what, 8 or 12 hours a day, depending on your work hours. So it's great that we can actually, take up these sort of initiatives and these programs to sort of kind of percolate throughout society, I guess.
Absolutely. And just from the chat again, Marta, somebody's directly, I don't know if you see this directly, put a question to you, which is, what is the benefit to have all that women you've mentioned in your team in that male-dominated field? So you've mentioned this amazing, the amazing women in your team, and what do they bring in that men won't or don't bring in? And I think it's a real opportunity. So often we're talking about trying to compete in the same way or be seen in the same way, but actually there are differences and they can be a huge strength. So for you, what do the women bring that the men don't?
I think they bring a different message. So basically, as we were saying before, in a pretty much male-dominated world, they're bringing a different message. So also that everybody can succeed with the right mix of motivation and dedication and passion and so. But yeah, I think it's a very, even if they are women, they are bringing an equal message.
Great. And for you, Gabrielle, what's the thing that women bring that men don't?
Oh, that's a really difficult question, actually, because I don't often think about the difference. So I think women, there is more empathy. I'm going to say that, I think you get a different style, a different approach of a type of engagement with a woman. And so I would say that my most successful mentors, for instance, have been women, which I hate to say it, but it's true. So I think they bring warmth and empathy, and sometimes a bit of structure to a way of working. But to be honest, I really try not to think about the difference. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So here's a slightly different question and probably a bit more of a personal question. As you think back over your careers, it sounds like all of your younger selves were passionate, driven, and confident. But if you were able to travel back in time now and your younger self would actually listen to you, what advice would you give them? So if you had a piece of advice that you wish you could have heard as your younger self from where you sit now, what might that be?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Mine will be really don't overthink things. It's like, did I do that right? Did I do it wrong? Or how could I have done it differently? Or what did they mean when they said that to me? Et cetera, et cetera. I think self-awareness is great, but you can get into this circle of overthinking things, and it doesn't do any good. You can't change what's happened or what's gone before. So, just move on. And that is one of the qualities I really admire in some of the strong men that I've worked with, in that they're pretty, well, it comes across, I can't see them overthinking, of course, but, it comes across as, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, I made a mistake. Let's move on, so on. So that's what I believe. I would have helped a lot.
Really interesting. So to be able to move on faster from things and not invest a lot of time.
Yes.
Yeah. Marta, what about you? And we seem to have lost Jess. She must have had a technical issue, so hopefully she'll come back.
I'm fully with you, because
great.
if I have to think about myself 20 years ago, overthinking was my thing. But apart from that, also, I think that this can be a good piece of advice, trying to find the best recipe that works for you to balance what makes you happy, also in terms of personal well-being, with the one self you are bringing to the office. Okay, so try to combine this recipe to bring the best version of yourself at 9 o'clock in the office.
Yeah,
Because we have the
absolutely.
responsibility of people. I'm leading a team, and I want to be the best version of myself with my team because they deserve it.
So bringing your best every day, which can be really challenging. As a
and you need to find the best recipe that works only for yourself.
Yeah. And you're not alone in the overthinking. We've got some comments in the chat as well about that very common thing of overthinking. A request to talk more about men's role in gender equity. For me, being an ally is too easy. We need to be passionate advocates and committed activists too. If you agree with this, what examples do you have of this, and how would you coach a male leader to step into this role? We've talked about female mentors, but how would you coach if you agree that men should not just be allies, but more passionate advocates, how would you coach them to step into this role? So firstly, do you agree? So Gabrielle, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Do I agree that they should be
more than allies and
more
passionate advocates and committed activists for gender equity?
My first reaction is I don't think they need to, but that's maybe a little bit irritable of me. So I would say that yes, but again, I don't think activist is the right word. I think just actively engage everyone, whatever gender, and in the same way. I don't think it matters that you I don't want anyone to be fighting my corner for me. I'll fight it myself or with others, but I'm not going to be expected to be represented by men being activists for me. I don't know. I don't really particularly like that approach, to be honest.
Fully agree.
There you go.
It is a great question, and I wonder how women might feel. Oh, Jess is back, and we'll just get her camera activated. So Jess, if you try that again.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what
Welcome back.
I've just joined on my phone, so hopefully that will work.
It's working perfectly. It's working perfectly. So you've missed some good questions.
I'm sure I have.
And we've just had a really interesting one that you might have a different take on. So I won't tell you what the take of Gabrielle and Marta are, and you weren't here to hear it. So here was a very interesting question in the chat. So we'll see your take. Uninfluenced. Please talk more about men's role in gender equity. For me, being an ally is too easy. We need to be passionate advocates and committed activists too. And I think it's worth repeating this question and having you answer it, because I'm sure there are a lot of men who are really inspired and committed and wanting to take an active role. And the question is, do you agree with this, that men need to be passionate advocates and committed activists to gender equity? And if you do agree, how would you coach a male leader to step into this role? And here, Jeremy's also added here, and I'm talking non-binary forms of gender equity, gender identity too. So okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree that it's required. I think definitely sort of training and support around it, because it's very difficult for people to really know sort of what to do. I think a simple way to think about it is your mum, your sister, your daughter. So if you're considering, you know, how would you like your daughter to be treated in the workplace, or how has your mum experienced being in the workplace? That's an easy way to sort of personalize it and make people really think about some of their unconscious biases, perhaps. But I also think, sorry to keep banging on about kids, but I think that it's the mental load that the women carry, and that's where the men have got to step in. So if you've got kids, it's not enough to just sort of take them to play football on a Saturday, or take them to a swimming lesson, or occasionally give them some fish fingers. You know, you have to have all of the mental load shared as well. And more people are writing about that, and it's become a more of a well-known phrase now. So I think a lot of it is about what happens at home in order to support women to deliver at work, and not just in the workplace. It's a global societal thing.
Yeah, really interesting. Trending back to what we talked about, which actually a lot of the things surrounding it have to change, and that's probably encouraging that people can make a difference in a really practical way, that's accessible, like in the home. To do that. Yeah, we're loving the mental load. I remember when I first heard it, really loving it as well, because it just made so much sense. So we are nearing the end of our time that we had here. I wonder if there is one thought that each of you just really briefly want to share, a top takeaway, a thought, an inspiration, a comment that you want to leave with, either just reflecting on something you've heard here, or a message that you want to send to women who aspire to be as successful as you have been in your careers. So just kind of one thing each on that top thought. What message would you give?
Say yes.
Say yes. Love that. Say yes.
And
Grab
to
those
me,
opportunities.
You can be, it seems trivial, but you can be whatever you want. So never give up.
Yeah, and mine is obviously the feel the fear and do it anyway. Kind of relates to the other ones. And also I think I'm going for the cloak, not cloak of journalism, unless you're a journalist, but you know, you can always wrap a cloak around yourself. You know, it might be a different cloak in different situations, but you know, just look for the right cloak.
Yeah. Love that. And I'm just going to say a few words in wrapping up. Firstly, to thank the three of you so much for being here. You've all been really different. You've offered different perspectives. You've been willing to challenge each other and agree with each other at the same time. And some really strong common themes have come out for me as I've been sitting here listening to you. And the themes of passion, be passionate about what you do. Each of you is passionate about what you do. That whole concept of focusing on the possibilities and not the challenges, that those challenges do exist, and the acknowledgement of those challenges, but just being unwilling to let those challenges stand in the way, and grabbing hold of opportunities and moving forward, and saying yes and not taking no for an answer, to be looking for your equivalent of the cloak or the flag, and thinking about that, whether it's a mentor, we've talked about that and the value of that, whether it's putting yourselves in positions where the values resonate and influencing in the way that you can. And I think most of all, refusing to be put in a box in terms of being less than or coming from a place of lack. That women have a rightful place, and the time has passed for us to be surprised that women are successful, but that it's a given that they will and can be. So I want to thank you so much. Thank you for all your fantastic comments and thoughts in the chat, your wonderful questions. Thank you for being here, and I hope you've been as inspired as I have been. And I wish you all the best in your journeys as you continue to create inclusive environments where everyone can thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.